They thought I'd sign immediately, just a final formality, a minor task. But buried in that document, I found what no one had bothered to check. Something that could vaporize the entire deal before launch. And when I learned the owner's son was the reason I was being pushed out, I put down my pen and waited. My name is Lauren Parker, and for 12 years, I was the invisible backbone of Linwell Systems. At 38, I'd built every operational process that kept our products compliant, functional, and legally bulletproof. While executives collected bonuses for visionary leadership, I was the one catching errors at 2:30 a.m., rewriting protocols that saved us from lawsuits, ensuring every launch happened without a hitch. I wasn't just good at my job, I was the reason the company hadn't imploded years ago. Then Bryce Hadley walked through our glass doors. 24 years old, fresh out of his third attempt at an MBA, wearing a Patek Philippe that cost more than most employees' annual salaries. Son of our founder and chairman, Marcus Hadley, his official title, Director of Product Strategy, his actual qualifications, being born lucky. "Lauren, this is Bryce," Marcus announced during our Monday morning meeting, his hand proudly resting on his son's shoulder. "He'll be taking point on the new product launch. I want you to give him all the support he needs." Support. That word hung in the air like smoke from a distant fire. You could smell something burning, but couldn't quite place what. Bryce's handshake was exactly what I expected: limp, brief, his eyes already sliding past me to scan the room for someone more important. "Great to finally put a face to the name," he said, though I was certain he'd never heard of me before that moment. "Dad says you handle the paperwork side of things." Paperwork. 12 years of keeping this company legally afloat, and I was the paperwork lady. "Operational compliance and risk management," I corrected, keeping my voice steady. "I ensure our products meet regulatory standards and that our launch protocols protect the company's interests." He nodded the way people do when they're not listening, already pulling out his phone. "Cool, cool. We'll definitely need to streamline some of that. Make things more agile. Less red tape." Less red tape. The same red tape that had saved us from a $20 million FDA fine last year. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Bryce bulldoze through our carefully constructed processes like a toddler through a house of cards. He scheduled meetings during my documented work blocks, then wondered why I couldn't attend. He reversed decisions I'd made after months of legal consultation, calling them overcautious. He brought in his fraternity brothers as consultants, guys who showed up at 10:30 a.m. reeking of last night's bourbon, billing us $500 an hour to nod at Bryce's PowerPoints. But the real signal came during the Thursday status meeting. I walked into conference room A to find my usual seat taken by one of Bryce's consultants. The only empty chair was in the corner, behind the potted ficus. "Oh, Lauren," Bryce said, noticing me hovering by the door. "Actually, we're keeping this one high level today, but could you email me those compliance reports by end of day? The summarized versions, nothing too detailed." High level. I'd been running these meetings for 5 years. "Of course," I said, maintaining the same pleasant expression I'd perfected during my divorce. "I'll have those to you by 3 p.m. The pattern intensified. My parking spot was suddenly needed for visitor spaces. My name disappeared from the launch team distribution list. Must have been an IT glitch. Projects I'd shepherded for months were reassigned to Bryce's team with no explanation. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one precisely placed. The final cut came on a Tuesday. HR scheduled a meeting for 4:45 p.m., always a bad sign. "Lauren, we want to talk about your future here," said Janet from HR, her smile as synthetic as her blazer. Beside her, Marcus Hadley sat with his fingers steepled, performing concern. "We think you've been carrying a heavy load, maybe too heavy." "I'm managing fine," I said, though we all knew this wasn't about my performance. "Of course you are," Marcus interjected, "but we're thinking bigger picture, work-life balance, mental health. We'd like to offer you an extended sabbatical, fully paid. Of course, take 6 months, recharge, come back refreshed." 6 months, just long enough for Bryce to cement his position, rewrite history, make himself the hero of the product launch I'd spent 2 years preparing. That's generous, I said, calculating. When would this sabbatical begin? We're thinking end of week. Give you time to transition your responsibilities. Transition. Hand over everything to the boy who thought compliance was optional and documentation was for people who can't think on their feet. I'll need to ensure all the launch documents are properly signed off first, I said. There's a final review pending. Marcus waved his hand. Bryce can handle any remaining signatures. We don't want you worrying about paperwork on your time off. Paperwork. There was that word again. I smiled. The same smile I'd given the judge when my ex-husband tried to hide assets. Of course, I'll make sure everything is in order before I go. They thought they were so clever. The aging female executive, pushed aside for the golden boy, a story as old as corporate America itself, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd forgotten that the paperwork lady was the only one who actually read the paperwork. Friday arrived like a funeral I'd been expecting, my last day. Though they'd framed it as the beginning of my rejuvenating sabbatical, I'd already packed my office 12 years condensed into 3 banker's boxes that security would graciously escort to my car at 5 p.m. sharp. At 4:30 p.m., Bryce's assistant knocked on my doorframe. Ms. Parker, Mr. Hadley needs you to sign off on the final compliance review before you leave. Mr. Hadley, the boy who used to get dropped off at company picnics in a Bentley. She handed me a manila folder, thick with documents. He said it's just a formality. Everything's been approved by legal. Just a formality? Those words should have been printed on red flags. I opened the folder at my desk, running my finger along the familiar paragraphs. Distribution agreements, manufacturing protocols, quality assurance standards, all the meticulous work I'd done over months. My signature would be the final seal, the last blessing before $120 million worth of product hit the market. Then I found it. Page 47, Section 12B, buried in a wall of legalese about intellectual property transfers. The wording had been changed, where our standard contract specified that all patent rights remained with Linwell Systems in perpetuity and without exception. Someone had inserted a modification, a single clause that created a loophole under exigent circumstances requiring strategic restructuring. Patent ownership could be transferred to designated affiliated entities. Affiliated entities, corporate speak for whatever shell company we create next week. I read it 3 times to be sure, my finger tracing the altered text. This wasn't a typo or a drafting error. The modification was surgical, designed to look like standard boilerplate to anyone skimming through. But I didn't skim. I never skimmed. I flipped to the document properties, last modified Wednesday, 2:14 p.m., by B. Hadley. Of course. I pulled up the original version from my personal backup, the one they didn't know I kept, side by side. The alteration was obvious. Bryce had edited the master document after legal review, counting on my rubber stamp to legitimize his revision. Once signed and submitted, it would be nearly impossible to prove tampering, and when some exigent circumstance conveniently arose in 6 months, the patents for our revolutionary biosensor technology could be quietly transferred to whatever company the Hadley family had waiting in the wings. $120 million product, 15 patents, 5 years of R&D, one signature away from being stolen in broad daylight. Bryce's assistant reappeared at 4:45 p.m. Mr. Hadley wanted me to check if you're done. He needs to submit everything to our distribution partners by 5 p.m. I looked up from the documents, my expression carefully neutral. These are quite detailed. I want to give them one final thorough review. She shifted uncomfortably. He specifically said it just needs your signature. Legal already. Legal reviewed a different version, I said, keeping my voice pleasant. Tell Bryce I take my fiduciary responsibilities seriously. I'll need to take these home for proper review. Her face went pale. But the deadline has been on the calendar for 3 months. If Bryce wanted this signed today, he should have provided the documents earlier than 4:30 p.m. on my last day. I slipped the folder into my briefcase. I'll review everything carefully this weekend and ensure it's handled appropriately. She practically ran back to Bryce's office. I could hear his voice rising from down the hall, though not the specific words. By 4:50 p.m., he appeared in my doorway himself, trying to project authority despite the flush creeping up his neck. "Lauren, I need those documents signed, now." I was already standing, briefcase in hand, boxes stacked on my desk for security to collect. "I understand the timeline, Bryce, which is why I'm taking them home to review properly. You'll have my response by Monday." "Monday." His voice cracked slightly. "The launch sequence starts Monday. Our partners need confirmation by 5 p.m. today or what?" I asked, genuinely curious how he'd finish that sentence. He straightened his tie, a nervous gesture I'd noticed in meetings when someone questioned his math. "This is unacceptable. I'm calling my father." "Please do," I said, moving past him toward the door. "Let him know I'm being exceptionally careful with documents that could impact a $120 million launch. I'm sure he'll appreciate my diligence." Security arrived with a cart for my boxes. Bryce stood there, phone pressed to his ear, watching me leave with the unsigned documents in my briefcase. The last thing I heard as the elevator doors closed was him saying, "Dad, we have a problem." "No," I thought, adjusting my grip on the briefcase. "You have a problem." I walked out of Linwell Systems at 5:07 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, carrying the only copy of the signature pages they needed. My phone started buzzing before I reached my car. Bryce, HR, Marcus himself. I let them all go to voicemail. The security guard at the gate gave me a sympathetic smile. "Take care, Ms. Parker. Hope you enjoy your time off." "Oh," I said, returning his smile. "I intend to." The unsigned document sat in my briefcase on the passenger seat as I drove home. $120 million hanging in the balance. A launch sequence that couldn't proceed without my signature. A patent clause that would have handed the Hadley family a golden parachute built for my work. They thought I'd sign without reading. They thought I'd comply like a good little paperwork lady, grateful for my paid sabbatical, too tired to notice their sleight of hand. They thought wrong. Monday came and went. I didn't sign the documents. I didn't answer my phone. I didn't respond to the increasingly frantic emails filling my personal inbox. I simply waited, watching the corporate machine struggle to breathe without its paperwork lady. By Tuesday, the calls had stopped. The silence told me everything they believed their bluff had worked, that I'd already signed and submitted everything before leaving. Bryce had probably told them it was handled. Too proud or too panicked to admit he'd let me walk out with unsigned documents. In corporate America, confidence could carry you far right up until reality came knocking. Wednesday morning, reality knocked hard. I was sitting in my kitchen, coffee steaming, when my phone buzzed with a text from Sandra in legal. We'd worked together for 8 years, shared battlefield stories over wine when deals went sideways. "Holy shit, Lauren, did you know the partners never received the signed compliance docs Bryce is telling everyone you submitted them Friday?" I typed back, "Interesting. Has anyone contacted the partners directly?" "Are you kidding? Bryce has been intercepting all communications. Says it's a minor technical delay with the document system." A minor technical delay? Like calling a heart attack mild indigestion. I opened my laptop and logged into my personal cloud storage, where I'd uploaded high-resolution scans of every page including Bryce's creative edits to Section 12B. Evidence preserved. Time-stamped. Indisputable. Thursday brought the first cracks in Bryce's facade. Our distribution partners, Meridian Logistics, weren't known for their patience. When you're coordinating a $120 million product launch across 17 countries, minor technical delays weren't part of the vocabulary. Sandra texted again at 2:15 p.m. "Meridian's CEO just called Marcus directly, wants to know why they haven't received the compliance package. Bryce tried to send them forged signatures. Their legal team flagged them immediately." Forged signatures. The boy who thought compliance was optional had just committed federal fraud. I pulled out the original documents, still unsigned, and photographed each page, the authentic version, with Bryce's modifications clearly visible. Then I activated the document tracking I'd embedded in the digital files, a little paranoid habit that was about to pay dividends. Every access, every edit, every attempt to copy or modify the documents had been logged. Bryce's digital fingerprints were all over the patent clause modifications. By Friday, the partners were threatening to pull out. A $120 million deal doesn't wait for paperwork. Their press releases were already printed, their distribution networks activated, their investors briefed. Every hour of delay cost money, real money, not theoretical valuations. My phone rang Marcus Hadley himself. I let it ring. The voicemail was beautiful in its desperation. "Lauren, this is Marcus. There seems to be some confusion about the compliance documents. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Please call me back immediately so we can resolve this. We value your contribution to Linwell, and I want to ensure you're enjoying your sabbatical." Your contribution. After 2 weeks, I'd been promoted from paperwork lady to valued contributor. Sandra's next text arrived at 4:47 p.m. Emergency board meeting called. Investors are spooked. Someone leaked that we can't produce signed compliance docs. Stock dropped 8% in after-hours trading. 8%, about $50 million in market cap, evaporated like morning mist, all for want of a signature. I opened my laptop again and navigated to the investor relations page. The launch announcement was still live, promising revolutionary biosensor technology to hit markets Monday. The press had picked it up. Tech blogs were buzzing. Pre-orders were stacking up. The higher they flew, the harder they'd fall. That evening, I sat on my deck with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of corporate blood orange. My phone buzzed continuously calls, texts, emails, even a few LinkedIn messages from board members I'd never spoken to. The powerful suddenly remembered my name when they needed something. The most interesting message came from an unknown number. "Ms. Parker, this is David Kerr from Meridian Logistics. We've been unable to get straight answers from Linwell about the compliance delay. As the listed compliance officer on previous documents, we're hoping you might clarify the situation. Please contact me at your earliest convenience." The distribution partner, reaching out directly, bypassing Bryce, bypassing Marcus, coming straight to the paperwork lady who'd never let them down before. I screenshotted the message and filed it with the others. Evidence of Linwell's scramble, their desperation, their slow-motion collapse, all because they'd pushed out the one person who actually read what she signed. Sunday arrived with a peculiar email in my inbox, not from Linwell from the SEC. A routine inquiry about unusual trading patterns in Linwell stock the week before the announced launch. Had anyone reached out to me about document irregularities? Was I aware of any internal issues that might affect the launch? The Securities and Exchange Commission, sniffing around the edges of what probably looked like insider trading. After all, who shorts a stock right before a major product launch? Someone who knows the launch won't happen. That's who. I crafted my response carefully, professionally, thoroughly. Yes, I'd been the compliance officer. Yes, I'd been asked to sign documents on my last day. No, I hadn't signed them due to discovering significant alterations that required further review. I'd be happy to provide documentation of these alterations if needed. CC David Kerr at Meridian Logistics, BCC. My lawyer. The fuse was lit. All I had to do now was step back and watch the fireworks. Sunday night, Marcus Hadley called again. This time, I answered. "Lauren," he said, his voice stripped of its usual corporate polish. "We need those documents signed. Name your price." Name your price. From sabbatical to bidding war in 1 week flat. "I don't have a price, Marcus. I have a concern about the altered patent clauses in Section 12B. Perhaps you should ask Bryce about those modifications." The silence stretched like taffy. "What modifications?" he asked finally, and I could hear the genuine confusion in his voice. "Oh, Marcus, you really didn't know what your golden boy was up to, did you?" "Check the document history," I said. "And Marcus, you might want to have that conversation before the markets open tomorrow." I hung up before he could respond. The unsigned documents lay on my coffee table. Patient as a loaded gun. Tomorrow, Linwell Systems would either admit to their investors that the launch was dead, or they'd try to lie their way through another day. Either way, I wouldn't be signing anything. Monday morning arrived like a hurricane making landfall. I woke at 6 a.m. to 17 missed calls and a text from Sandra that simply read, "Turn on CNBC." The headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen, Linwell Systems delays 120 billion. Product launch, investors demand answers. The markets hadn't even opened yet, and Linwell was already bleeding. I made coffee and settled in to watch the show. The business anchor looked appropriately grave as she discussed the unexpected complications surrounding Linwell's biosensor launch. The company's official statement was a masterpiece of corporate nothing-speak. Minor administrative delays. Full confidence in resolution. Committed to stakeholder value. My phone rang. David Kerr from Meridian. "Ms. Parker," he said without preamble, "I received your email to the SEC. We need to talk." "I'm listening." "My legal team has been trying to get straight answers from Linwell for a week. All we get is runaround from someone named Bryce Hadley, who seems to think forged documents are acceptable business practice." His voice carried the controlled fury of a man watching millions circle the drain. "You were our point of contact for 3 years. You never missed a deadline, never submitted questionable paperwork. So I'm asking directly what the hell is going on." I took a sip of coffee, choosing my words carefully. "Mr. Kerr, I'm currently on sabbatical from Linwell. However, I can confirm that I was asked to sign modified documents on my last day of employment, documents that contained alterations to the intellectual property clauses that I believed warranted further review." "What kind of alterations?" "The kind that might allow patent transfers to unspecified affiliated entities under conveniently vague circumstances." He swore creatively. "Are you telling me they tried to create a backdoor to steal their own IP?" "I'm telling you I didn't sign documents that had been materially altered after legal review. What you infer from that is your business." "Can you prove these alterations?" "Every keystroke is documented, Mr. Kerr. Digital forensics is a beautiful thing." Another pause. "Would you be willing to share that documentation with our legal team?" "Under appropriate legal protections and with proper chain of custody procedures, absolutely." "I'll have our lawyers contact yours within the hour." After we hung up, I checked Linwell's stock price, down 12% in pre-market trading. The investor forums were lighting up with speculation, everything from production failures to accounting fraud. None of them guessed the truth that their golden boy tried to get too clever with a patent clause and got caught by the paperwork lady. At 9:30 a.m., my lawyer called. "Lauren, I just got off the phone with Meridian's legal team. They're considering pulling out of the deal entirely unless Linwell can produce properly executed documents by close of business today." "They can't," I said simply. "I have the only unsigned copies, and the modified versions would never pass Meridian's legal review. They're also discussing potential lawsuits, breach of contract, fraudulent misrepresentation, securities fraud, if they can prove Linwell knew the launch was impossible when they let investors continue trading. Securities fraud, the kind of charge that came with federal investigations and personal liability for executives, the kind that pierced corporate veils and reached into personal assets." "Interesting," I said. "By the way, did I mention Bryce Hadley attempted to forge my signature?" My lawyer made a sound between a laugh and a gasp. "Please tell me you have proof." "Check your email. I just sent you the document tracking logs showing his attempts to recreate my signature after I left with the unsigned papers." "Jesus Christ. Lauren, this is a federal crime. He could go to prison for this." "Yes," I said mildly. "He could." By noon, the story had evolved. Technical delays had become document irregularities. Some enterprising reporter had connected the dots between my sudden sabbatical and the missing signatures. My LinkedIn profile views had spiked by 3,000%. Then came the call I'd been expecting. Not Marcus, not Bryce, not even HR. It was Richard Steinberg, the lead independent director on Linwell's board. "Lauren," he said, his voice careful as a man walking through a minefield, "the board has some concerns about the current situation." "I imagine you do." We've just learned about potential modifications to the IP transfer clauses in the compliance documents, modifications that appear to have been made without board knowledge or approval. Ah, so Marcus had finally looked at Section 12B. That's concerning, I said, matching his neutral tone. We've also learned that Bryce Hadley may have attempted to circumvent proper signature procedures. Circumvent. Such a polite word for forgery. The board is conducting an emergency review, he continued. We need to understand exactly what happened. Would you be willing to speak with us, strictly confidential? Of course. Mr. Steinberg, I'm currently on a company-mandated sabbatical. I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to involve myself in internal matters. I could practically hear him grinding his teeth. Lauren, please, the company is facing potential lawsuits, SEC investigations, and a complete collapse of a major product launch. If you have information that could help us understand how we got here. I have documentation, I said finally. Extensive documentation, including the original documents I was asked to sign, complete with tracked modifications and timestamp data showing when and by whom changes were made. Thank God, he breathed. What do you need from us? I'll need written assurance from the board that providing this information won't violate any terms of my sabbatical agreement. I'll also need guarantee of whistleblower protections given the potential securities implications. You'll have it within the hour. One more thing, I added. I want it clearly stated that I raised concerns about these documents before leaving, and that my refusal to sign was based on fiduciary responsibility, not any personal grievance. Of course, Lauren, why didn't you just tell someone about the modifications? I laughed, short and sharp. Mr. Steinberg, I was put on involuntary sabbatical the same day these documents appeared. My concerns about Bryce Hadley's practices had been systematically ignored for weeks. Who exactly should I have told the CEO who hired him, the HR department that pushed me out, the legal team that reports to Bryce? Silence. Then, point taken, we'll send the paperwork immediately. By 3 p.m., Linwell's stock had dropped 18%. Trading was halted twice for volatility. The financial press smelled blood in the water, and the feeding frenzy had begun. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. You vindictive bitch, you've destroyed everything. B. Bryce had finally figured out who held his future in her hands. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to my lawyer. Evidence of harassment to add to the pile. Another text followed minutes later. We can fix this. Just sign the original documents. No one needs to know about the changes. We'll make it worth your while. And there it was, in writing. An attempt to bribe me into signing documents he knew were fraudulent. The boy really was too stupid to save himself. I forwarded that one too, then blocked his number. Let him stew in the mess he'd created. The golden boy was about to learn what happened when you tried to build an empire on a foundation of forged signatures and stolen patents. The paperwork lady had one last document to deliver, and this one would be properly signed, sealed, and devastating. Tuesday morning, I crafted an email that would detonate like a precision explosive. 3 lines, each one calculated to maximum effect. To selected private equity investors. From anonymous subject, Linwell Systems, material information. Documents remain unsigned, patent protections unexecuted. The sole authorized signatory has departed. I have no interest in returning, but I can ensure you don't lose everything. I routed it through a VPN, bounced it off servers in 3 countries, and sent it to 5 of Linwell's largest institutional investors, the ones with board seats, the ones who could demand answers, the ones who wouldn't tolerate games when 9 figures were at stake. Then I waited. Sandra texted me at 11 a.m. Something's happening. Emergency board meeting called. Investors are in the building. Marcus looks like he hasn't slept in days. By noon, my anonymous email account had 3 responses. Each investor wanted to know more. Each one smelled opportunity in Linwell's desperation either to salvage their investment or to short the stock before total collapse. I selected the most interesting response from Blackstone Capital. They held 15% of Linwell, had 2 board seats, and their managing partner, Victoria Ash, was known for taking no prisoners. "We're listening," her email read. "Linwell claims technical delays. We suspect otherwise. If you have material information affecting our investment, we need to discuss terms." Terms, not threats, not legal posturing, just business. I responded, "I possess all original documents, unmodified, with complete audit trail showing attempted IP theft through fraudulent alterations, also evidence of attempted forgery by executive staff. This information could either destroy remaining value or allow reconstruction under new management. Your choice." The response came within minutes. "Name your consulting fee." I smiled. Not a job offer, not a bribe, a consulting fee, clean, legal, and probably more than my annual salary. $200,000 for complete documentation package and sworn affidavit, $300,000 if you need expert testimony and resulting litigation, $500,000 if you want exclusive access before SEC filing. My phone rang immediately. Victoria Ash herself. "Those are ambitious numbers," she said without preamble. "Those are bankruptcy prevention numbers," I countered. "How much does Blackstone stand to lose if Linwell goes under?" Point taken. The documentation, how comprehensive. Every email, every document revision, every timestamp, digital forensics showing who made what changes when. Proof that Marcus Hadley's son attempted to create a mechanism to transfer patents worth hundreds of millions to a shell company. Evidence of attempted forgery when I refused to sign. Would you like me to continue? Christ. She was quiet for a moment. "And you have physical possession of the unsigned documents." "The only copies that matter. Without my signature, the entire launch is dead. The partners are already threatening to sue. The SEC is asking questions. And young Mr. Hadley was stupid enough to put his crimes in writing." "When can you meet?" "I'm available whenever your lawyers are ready with appropriate confidentiality agreements and a cashier's check." She laughed, short and sharp. "I like you. Should we have hired you instead of investing in Linwell?" "You couldn't have afforded me," I said. "I was keeping that place running for a fraction of my value, but that charity ended when they tried to push me out for the owner's son." "1 hour," she said. "Our offices. Bring everything." I gathered my evidence like a general preparing for war. The original documents in a locked briefcase, USB drives with the digital trail, printed screenshots of Bryce's increasingly desperate messages, my laptop with the full email chains showing how I'd been systematically excluded from meetings, removed from projects, pushed toward the door. The security guard at Blackstone's building gave me a visitor badge and a knowing look. Word traveled fast in these circles. The compliance officer who'd brought a unicorn to its knees was becoming legend. Victoria Ash met me in a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She had 2 lawyers with her, their faces carefully neutral. "Show us," she said simply. I laid it out like a pathologist performing an autopsy. The original documents, the modified versions, the timestamp data showing Bryce's edits, the attempted forgeries flagged by Meridian Systems, his text messages attempting first to threaten, then to bribe me. "This is..." One of the lawyers paused, searching for words. "This is catastrophic. He didn't just try to steal from investors. He tried to steal from his own company. While forcing out the one person who could have stopped him," Victoria added, "studying me. They gave you a sabbatical. You said, 6 months paid leave, fully documented by HR as voluntary, though we all know it wasn't. So you're technically still an employee. For another 5 months and 1 week?" She smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Which means you have a fiduciary duty to protect shareholder interests." "Which is exactly what I'm doing by refusing to sign fraudulent documents. And by bringing this to our attention, preventing greater losses serves shareholder interests, doesn't it?" The lawyers exchanged glances. One of them slid a contract across the table. "Consulting agreement, terms as discussed, sign here, and you're officially working to protect Blackstone's investment in Linwell Systems." I read every line. Old habits die hard. Clean, comprehensive, ironclad. I signed with the same pen I'd refused to use on Bryce's forgeries. Victoria stood, extending her hand. Welcome to the team. Now, let's discuss how we're going to handle the board meeting tomorrow. Board meeting. Emergency session. The investors are demanding answers. Marcus is trying to blame communication failures and process breakdowns. He has no idea we know about the patent clause yet. Her smile was predatory. By the way, what would it take to get you to actually sign legitimate documents, assuming we can get them prepared? New management, I said without hesitation. Bryce Hadley gone. Marcus stepped down from operations, and a written apology from both of them acknowledging my termination was improper. That's all? And my consulting fee covers helping you restructure the deal. The product is good, the technology is revolutionary, it's just the management that's rotten. Done. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling an emergency investor caucus. We're going to the board with a unified position, new leadership, or we pull our funding. As I left Blackstone's offices with my check and contract, my phone buzzed with a message from Sandra. Holy shit, Lauren, Blackstone just called for Marcus's resignation. What did you do? I typed back, my job, just not for them anymore. The paperwork lady had just become a queenmaker, and the kingdom was about to change hands. The call started at 6 p.m. Tuesday. Unknown numbers, blocked numbers, numbers I recognized but had no interest in engaging. I let them all go to voicemail while I enjoyed a particularly good Cabernet on my deck. The first voicemail was from Marcus himself. His CEO voice trying to project authority through obvious panic. Lauren, we need to discuss your recent actions. You're still an employee of Linwell Systems, and sharing confidential information with outside parties is a serious breach of your obligations. Call me immediately. The second came from Janet in HR. Syrupy sweet with underlying threat. Hi, Lauren. We've been made aware of some concerning activity. As you know, your sabbatical agreement includes strict confidentiality clauses. We should chat about this before things escalate. Please call me back tonight. The third was from a number I didn't recognize, but the voice was unmistakable, Bryce, using someone else's phone. You think you've won something here? You have no idea who you're messing with. My father built this company. We'll bury you in legal fees until you're living in a cardboard box. Sign the fucking documents. I forwarded all 3 recordings to my lawyer with a note. Please add harassment and attempted intimidation to our file. Wednesday morning brought a new wave of desperation. My personal email contained a message from Linwell's chief legal counsel. Richard Cromwell, a man who'd spent 3 years ignoring my compliance concerns and was now suddenly very interested in my well-being. Ms. Parker, the email began. It has come to our attention that you may be in possession of proprietary documents belonging to Linwell Systems. We must insist on their immediate return. Additionally, we've been informed of your contact with certain investment entities, which may constitute a violation of your employment agreement. I stopped reading and forwarded it to Victoria Ash with a single line, "They're panicking." Her response was immediate. Board meeting in 2 hours. They don't know I'll be there personally. Keep your phone on. At 10 a.m., my phone rang. Victoria. You're on speaker with the full investor coalition, she said. Marcus just spent 20 minutes claiming this is all a misunderstanding. Says you're a disgruntled employee trying to sabotage the launch out of spite. Did he mention his son's attempted patent theft? He claims Bryce was showing initiative in exploring strategic alternatives. I laughed. Is that what we're calling forgery now? He also says you refused to do your job and abandoned your responsibilities. I refused to sign fraudulent documents. There's a difference. Another voice came through the speaker, deep, authoritative. Ms. Parker, this is Thomas Chen from Peninsula Partners. We need those documents signed to salvage this deal. What's your price? I don't have a price. Mr. Chen, I have requirements. New management, proper governance, and acknowledgement of what actually happened here. I won't be party to fraud, no matter how well it pays. And if we meet those requirements, then I'll review properly prepared documents and sign them if they're legally sound. The technology deserves to reach market. It's the leadership that's toxic. Victoria came back on. Stand by? We're about to present our ultimatum. The line went quiet but stayed open. I could hear muffled voices. What sounded like Marcus's rising tone, then a sharp gavel, someone calling for order. 20 minutes passed. Then Victoria's voice, clear and triumphant. Motion carried. Marcus Hadley will step down as CEO effective immediately. Bryce Hadley's employment is terminated for cause. The board has appointed me as interim chair while we search for new leadership. Congratulations, I said. We're not done. Can you be here in an hour with the original documents? We need to verify their contents before proceeding with termination negotiations. On my way. I arrived at Linwell's headquarters, my former workplace, to find security stationed at every entrance. The lobby buzzed with nervous energy. Employees clustered in small groups, whispering about the emergency board meeting, the investor revolt, the sudden fall of the Hadley dynasty. The elevator ride to the boardroom felt like ascending to a coronation. My coronation, in a way. The paperwork lady finally getting her day in court. The boardroom was a battlefield. Marcus sat at one end of the table, his face gray, flanked by lawyers. Bryce was nowhere to be seen, already escorted out. I learned later. The investors lined one side of the table like a tribunal. Victoria gestured to an empty chair. Ms. Parker, thank you for coming. We need to verify the documents in question. I opened my briefcase with theatrical precision, laying out the unsigned originals like evidence at trial. Original distribution agreements, original compliance certifications, original patent assignments without Mr. Hadley Jr.'s creative additions. One of the board members, someone I'd never seen before, leaned forward. Can you show us exactly what was changed? I pulled out my laptop, connecting it to the boardroom's display system. Side-by-side comparison. Original versus modified. The altered patent clause highlighted in damning yellow. This modification, I explained, would have allowed transfer of all biosensor patents to any affiliated entity under broadly defined circumstances. Given that Bryce Hadley incorporated a Delaware LLC 2 weeks ago, yes. I checked. I think we can guess where those patents were heading. The room erupted. Board members shouting questions at Marcus. Lawyers huddling with their clients. Investors demanding forensic audits. Through it all, Marcus stared at me with undisguised hatred. Victoria called for order. Mr. Hadley, do you have any explanation for your son's actions? Marcus's jaw worked silently before he spoke. Bryce was overzealous. He didn't understand the implications. If Ms. Parker had simply communicated her concerns. I was on involuntary sabbatical, I interrupted. Pushed out to make room for your son. Hard to communicate concerns when you're not allowed in the building. You could have. What called the CEO who put his unqualified son in charge, contacted HR, who showed me the door, reached out to legal, who reported to Bryce. I let my voice carry the full weight of my disgust. I did exactly what I should have done. I protected the company from fraud, even after you tried to throw me away. Victoria raised a hand. Enough, Marcus. The board has lost confidence in your leadership. You'll receive the severance package outlined in your contract, minus any clawbacks related to this situation. Bryce's termination is for cause, no severance, and we'll be reviewing all his actions for potential criminal liability. She turned to me. Ms. Parker, we need these documents signed within 24 hours to salvage the Meridian Partnership. Will you help us? Under certain conditions, I said. First, I want a written acknowledgement that my sabbatical was constructive termination, not voluntary. Second, I want to review any documents before signing to ensure they're properly prepared. Third, I want it on record that I raised concerns about Bryce Hadley's practices and was ignored. Done, Victoria said immediately. Anything else? I looked directly at Marcus. An apology, in writing, acknowledging that he put personal interests above fiduciary duty and that his actions caused material harm to shareholders, employees, and partners. Marcus's face went from gray to purple. I will not. You will, Victoria cut him off, or will pursue personal liability for your failure to supervise your son's criminal activities. Your choice. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. Fine. Excellent, Victoria smiled. Ms. Parker, can you stay to help us prepare proper documents? We'll compensate you for your time, of course. My consulting rate is $5,000 per day, I said calmly. Given the urgency, I'll need 10 days guaranteed. Agreed. As the board meeting dissolved into smaller groups handling logistics, Marcus approached me. For a moment, we stood face to face, the fallen king and the paperwork lady who'd toppled his throne. You destroyed my family, he said quietly. No, I replied. Your son did that when he decided to steal. You did that when you chose nepotism over competence. I just refused to sign my name to your collapse. He left without another word. I never saw him again. The news broke Thursday morning like a thunderclap across the business world. Linwell Systems CEO resigns amid compliance scandal. Founder's son terminated for alleged document fraud. Investors stage coup at tech unicorn. But the real story was in the details trickling out through industry whispers. A compliance officer who'd refused to sign, a patent scheme uncovered by accident, a 24-year-old's hubris bringing down a billion-dollar company. I spent Thursday at Linwell's offices, working with the crisis management team Victoria had assembled. The documents needed to be perfect, not just legally sound, but bulletproof against any future challenges. Every clause scrutinized, every term defined, every signature line properly designated. Jesus, said the new legal counsel, reviewing Bryce's modifications. He really thought he could just steal the entire IP portfolio. He thought no one would read past page 40, I replied, marking up the corrected version. He was almost right. By 3 p.m., we had clean documents ready for signature, but first, they needed one more thing, Marcus Hadley's written apology, as promised. It arrived at 4:17 p.m., probably drafted by his lawyers, but signed in his own hand. To the board of directors, shareholders, and employees of Linwell Systems, I acknowledge that my decision to place my son, Bryce Hadley, in a position of authority without proper qualifications constituted a breach of my fiduciary duty. I further acknowledge that my failure to provide appropriate oversight enabled actions that put the company's assets and reputation at risk. I specifically apologize to Ms. Lauren Parker, whose concerns about governance and compliance were dismissed, and who was constructively terminated to accommodate my son's placement. Her refusal to sign altered documents was an act of integrity that ultimately protected shareholder value. I accept full responsibility for the resulting damage to the company and its stakeholders. Marcus Hadley. I read it twice, savoring each word like aged wine. Then I signed the corrected documents with a steady hand. $120 million, saved by a signature properly given. Friday brought an unexpected visit. Bryce Hadley, escorted by building security, collecting his personal items. I was in the executive conference room when he passed by, his arms full of framed diplomas and golf trophies. He stopped in the doorway, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief. You happy now? I looked up from the transition documents I was reviewing. I'm working, Bryce, something you might have tried. You destroyed everything. My career, my father's legacy. You destroyed yourself the moment you edited those patent clauses. I just declined to be your accomplice. He stepped forward. Security tensed. Do you know what you've cost me? The opportunity to steal hundreds of millions in IP. I kept my voice conversational. Yes, I'm aware. That's not I wasn't stealing. I was creating strategic flexibility. Is that what you told the FBI? His face went white. What? Oh, did Victoria not mention wire fraud, securities fraud, attempted forgery? These aren't civil matters. Bryce, they're criminal. I'd lawyer up if I were you, and not with Daddy's firm. He dropped one of his trophies. It shattered on the marble floor, cheap gold plastic scattering like his prospects. Security moved in, guiding him away as he sputtered threats about lawsuits and revenge. I went back to my documents. There was work to do. The announcement went out at 4 p.m. Linwell Systems had resolved its compliance issues. The product launch was back on track. New leadership was being put in place. The stock began to recover, climbing 8% in after-hours trading. Victoria called as I was packing up. The board met again. We want to offer you the Chief Compliance Officer position. Real authority this time, direct reporting to the board. I'd been expecting this. I'm flattered, but no. The salary is negotiable. Stock options, full benefits. It's not about money. Victoria, I spent 12 years building something there, only to be pushed aside for a nepotism hire. The trust is broken. Then what will you do? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I have some ideas. There are other companies that could use someone who actually reads the fine print. If you change your mind, I won't, but thank you. That evening, I received one last communication, an email from David Kerr at Meridian. Ms. Parker, I wanted to personally thank you for your integrity in this matter. Your refusal to sign compromised documents saved our company from a potentially catastrophic partnership. If you're ever looking for new opportunities, Meridian would be honored to have someone of your caliber on our team. We read every page, too. Best regards. David Kerr, CEO, Meridian Logistics. I poured another glass of wine and watched the sunset from my deck. Next door, my neighbor was grilling, the smell of charcoal and possibility drifting over the fence. Normal life, continuing as if the corporate world hadn't just witnessed a palace coup. My phone buzzed with messages from recruiters, reporters, former colleagues, expressing shock and admiration. I ignored them all. The story would tell itself now, the compliance officer who brought down a CEO with a single missing signature. But there was one message I did answer, from Sandra, still at Linwell, still fighting the good fight. Thank you for standing up when no one else would. Some of us won't forget. I typed back, take care of the place, and Sandra always read before you sign. The documents that had started everything sat in my home, safe now, historical artifacts of corporate hubris and individual integrity. Unsigned pages worth more than any signature I'd ever given. Monday would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new documents to review. But tonight, I was just Lauren Parker, sitting on her deck, enjoying the quiet satisfaction of a job properly done. The paperwork lady had finished her filing. The product launch event was scheduled for 10 a.m. Monday at the Grand Ballroom downtown. The same venue, the same time, the same fanfare that had been planned for weeks. Only now, everything behind the curtain had changed. I wasn't invited, of course, but I watched the live stream from my favorite coffee shop. Laptop open to the financial news. My consultant's check already cleared and safely deposited. The banner read, Linwell Systems announces revolutionary biosensor technology. No mention of the chaos that had nearly killed it. Victoria Ash took the stage instead of Marcus, poised, professional, not a hint of the frantic week behind her. The press didn't know that 72 hours ago. This launch was dead in the water. They didn't know about unsigned documents or forged signatures or patent theft schemes. They definitely didn't know about the paperwork lady who'd held a pen like a sword. This technology represents the future of personal health monitoring, Victoria announced to thunderous applause. The stock price ticked upward with each bullet point. By market close, Linwell had recovered everything it had lost, and then some. My phone vibrated, a notification from my investment app. The small position I'd taken in Linwell's competitors during the chaos had paid off handsomely when they'd crashed on Linwell's recovery. Just a little bonus for understanding market psychology. Then came a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it until I read the preview. Ms. Parker, this is James Morrison, CEO of Titan Technologies. I've been following the Linwell situation with great interest. We're preparing for a major acquisition that will require meticulous compliance oversight. Someone who reads every page. Interested in a conversation, our doors don't have nepotism problems. I smiled, screenshotting the message. 3 other companies had reached out since Friday. My accidental fame as the woman who'd saved and sunk Linwell simultaneously had made me the most sought-after compliance officer in tech. But I wasn't ready to sign anything yet. Not until I found the right fit, a company that valued precision over politics, integrity over connections, competence over surnames. The live stream continued. Demos of the biosensor, testimonials from beta testers, promises of a healthier future, all built on documents I'd finally signed. Clean and legitimate, the technology would help millions, just as intended. Only the parasites had been removed. Then, in the Q&A portion, a reporter asked the question I'd been waiting for. Can you address the leadership changes that occurred just days before this launch? Victoria's smile never wavered. Linwell Systems is committed to the highest standards of corporate governance. Recent changes reflect our dedication to putting the right people in the right positions. We're grateful to all team members who helped ensure this launch met our exacting standards. No names, no details. The official story scrubbed clean for public consumption. Somewhere, Marcus Hadley was probably watching from his home. His empire reduced to a severance check. Somewhere else, Bryce was meeting with criminal defense attorneys, learning that Daddy's money couldn't buy him out of federal charges. And here I sat, anonymous in my corner coffee shop, the architect of their downfall, enjoying a particularly good latte. My laptop dinged with an email. The subject line made me laugh out loud, from one reader to another. Dear Ms. Parker, my name is Elizabeth Sterling, and I run a boutique consulting firm specializing in corporate governance and compliance. We help companies avoid becoming the next Linwell. I have a proposition instead of taking another corporate position where your vigilance might again be punished by politics. Why not join us in preventing these disasters before they happen? We teach companies to value their Lauren Parkers before they lose them. Your story has become something of a legend in our circles, the compliance officer who saved a company from itself with the simple act of reading. We could use that legend. If you're interested, I'm buying lunch. I promise to read every word of any agreement before asking you to sign. Best regards, Elizabeth Sterling, Sterling Governance Group. I read it twice, something warm unfurling in my chest. Not just another job offer, an opportunity to turn my experience into prevention, my vigilance into education, my story into change. I opened a reply and began typing. Ms. Sterling, I'm interested, but first, I have some documents for you to review my standard consulting terms, all 47 pages. I trust you'll read them carefully. Lauren Parker. The response came within minutes, every single word. I closed my laptop and finished my coffee. Outside, the city churned on, full of companies and executives and golden boys who thought they could cut corners, hide crimes in subsection B, build empires on forged foundations. They had no idea how many Lauren Parkers were out there, watching, reading, waiting. The unsigned documents had done their work. The signatures I'd withheld had spoken louder than any accusation. $120 million, saved by the simple act of putting down a pen. The grand ballroom might have hosted the official celebration, but here in my quiet coffee shop corner, I held my own small ceremony, a toast with cooling latte to all the paperwork ladies and gentlemen out there, reading every line, catching every trick, holding the line against corporate corruption one document at a time. We see you, even when they don't. We value you, even when they won't. And sometimes, when they push us too far, we show them exactly why they should have valued us all along. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story of corporate revenge and the power of integrity. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Please share in the comments below so we can connect with fellow listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed Lauren's journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in her position? Let's discuss in the comments.